Welcome to another episode of the SAICE CEO Podcast. Normally as engineers, we measure the impact of our work through the roads we build, the water we provide, the bridges we construct. But at the core of what we do is the people and communities where these people live. Human settlements sit at the intersection of engineering, planning, leadership, and public service. They remind us that infrastructure is never just about the structures. It's about creating places that can house people, that can create a livable space to offer people dignity and opportunity. Today, I'm delighted to be joined by the MEC for Human Settlements in Gauteng, MEC Tasneem Motara, a woman whose career I have followed quite closely since I came to SAICE and who I admire. And thank you so much, MEC. We want to come and explore with you where engineering and community and public service and leadership intersect. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you so much, CEO, for having me. It's an honor and a privilege to be with you.
Awesome. So, as engineers, we often say that infrastructure shapes society, and in many ways, human settlements is where that becomes visible. And when you look at the journey of South Africa so far from our spatial apartheid planning in the past and the impact that it has had on how cities are formed, what do you believe what role do you believe engineering plays in all of this to ensure that we can overcome these spatial inequities, if I can put it that way?
Yes, so I think the apartheid spatial plan is still very much part of what we are and who we are as South Africa. We've sadly, 30 years after democracy, have not necessarily been able to undo it or reverse it. We've essentially kept that model of how cities are built and constructed and designed quite intact, and I think that's an unfortunate aspect of just the planning process, not necessarily an engineering issue. And I think that from an engineering perspective, engineers are meant to provide us with solutions to a problem. And of course, yes, while the spatial plan is the problem, but I think there's also a need for synergies between different built environment professionals to be able to give us the solution that we want. So often engineers will speak about the solution on water infrastructure, or so it's civil infrastructure or electrical infrastructure or mechanical infrastructure. They're not thinking about the holistic, whether it has responded to and provided for actual solutions. Your solution might be very well a solution for the problem that you're trying to solve, but it's not solving the overall solution. And I think there's got to be more synergy between engineers and other built environment professionals, especially planners, especially even architects. Everybody sort of focuses just on their profession and what they have to provide, without necessarily thinking about holistically, is it providing the response that we need? For us now, I think we've got a lot of apartheid spatial planning is one of them. But there's a lot of problems that we're trying to solve simultaneously. If you think of climate change, if you think of just building new economies, new cities, there's a big tagline around smart cities. What does that actually mean? So there is a need for all role players to work more closely and be interested in what is not necessarily your profession, but your counterpart's profession that can add a lot of value to what you do.
I like what you said, and it's an aspect that is probably missing in engineering education, the social aspect about it, the social engineering and looking further than just the mere infrastructure that you provide, but how we want to leave cities in 10 or 20 years' time, or for our children, actually. So I really like that. In terms of some of the challenges that you're facing in migration, especially for the Gauteng region, maybe you can give us some aspects about that.
So our bigger problem is definitely in migration. So in migration for us in Gauteng comes twofold. One, in country, so other provinces migrate to Gauteng on a daily basis, looking for opportunities, either for work, looking to bring their children to better schools. They don't necessarily have a plan. They don't necessarily know that I'm moving to Gauteng tomorrow and this is what's going to happen. They're sort of just winging it. Let's go to Gauteng and let's see I'm sure we can do better. And then we have a lot of in-migration from neighboring countries. Majority of them in SADC, yes, who come to the first port of entry will be Johannesburg, and they come here and they stay. Our second challenge is so that gives us a challenge of keeping up with providing not only services but the infrastructure to absorb the amount of people that are there. Secondly, we are the most populous province but the smallest in land size. So we just don't have enough space. And, we're not as vast as other provinces. So how we use our space is very, very important, because if we're not careful, you're going to not only use space incorrectly, ineffectively, but you're going to contribute to creating other problems. And then lastly is just the fact that our economy as a whole in the country has not been doing great. South Africa's GDP, Gauteng contributes 35%, 33 to 35% of the country's GDP. So if we're not maintaining that or growing the Gauteng economy, you're not growing the South African economy. And if we were a country on our own, Gauteng would be the 7th largest economy in the continent. So if you're not working as a province, if you're not contributing or increasing your GDP, if there isn't enough economic activity, it also has a ripple effect on what happens on the continent. So those are our challenges. And then, like I say, people migrate to Gauteng every day. How do you keep up with that when plans take some time? Gauteng, it's not a Gauteng problem. I think it's just the South African challenge is bureaucracy and red tape. So how do you make decisions quicker so that you're able to plan ahead of whatever your problems are, knowing what your problems are?
That is an excellent question, actually, and for us as engineering professionals as well to remember. I like what you said around how we don't necessarily have all the land that we can get in Gauteng, because I'm seeing a lot of high density development in traditionally very residential, quiet areas, and there's such a rush for that. Is that also the vision of the Gauteng department as well?
Yes, so the Department of Human Settlements, formerly known as Housing, would have built what a lot of residents know as your typical RDP house. It's a standalone little house that you can extend. It's got a little bit of space. You can extend outwards or upwards, depending. But we quickly realized that that's just not a sustainable way. And a lot of conversations have been happening about what is an opportunity to housing. So is it ownership? Does it have to be ownership? Can it be rental? Can it be other opportunities? I think the biggest, the effect is that a home doesn't last for longer than 2 generations in a family. It's very rare that it does. Otherwise, if you have a family home, you've got to find some cousin who is,
yes,
who's just going to keep the house occupied.
I know that.
But all of us, we don't live in the house we grew up in. And our children are not going to live in the house that they grow up in. They're going to move, they're going to get into their own opportunities, probably work or profession or marriage. If you're a woman, will take you away. So there's a lot of factors that take you away from the structure of your home. So it was an opportune moment for us to have a conversation about housing opportunity. So are we able to provide the housing opportunities that your population requires? And we were the first to really punt for walk-ups. And when the policy was changed, it was called Breaking New Ground. So it's about densification. Yes, we still do, it's an RDP house, densified, and you own it. And then there's also other opportunities, which is the social housing, which is rental stock, and then the bonded, because people do have an attachment to wanting to own a house. But the bigger question is, what does housing opportunity mean? Is it easy for me to move from Johannesburg to another municipality and find a place to live, knowing that I'm maybe going to live for 15, 20, 30 years. Beyond that, I will have the next phase of my life, and wherever that will take me, will I have a housing opportunity, or am I going to be stuck? So the old RDP house was about, of course, answering the question about security of tenure. We come from a particular history of people, a particular band of our population never owning, and never having an opportunity to own. So this was really to answer that you've never had an opportunity to own. Now you have an opportunity to own through government. But we've got many more people that require housing than we have land available.
Yes,
if we were to build
that is true.
That way. Look, even the private sector builds in a densified manner, and they build for bonds. They build to mortgage that property. They don't build it to hold on to it. So people have changed how they also relate to property. There's different things that go into your choices about where you live and what type of home you buy or lease. You've got to think about security. You've got to think about access to amenities. You've got to think about access to recreation. So not just about school and work. What do you do after that? You've also got to think about, like I say, a big issue for us right now is safety. So if I'm away for the weekend, am I going to come back to my home still in one piece? So the argument about big standalone houses with, big gardens, maintenance is also very expensive. And cost of living also is a factor into what we decide where and how. So maintenance, what are you willing to spend on a home? How much of your disposable income are you willing to spend on your home, or is other aspects of your life a priority? In a typical urban setup, especially in Gauteng, you have a family, both are workers, both would be employed, so there's no need to have a home where the mom is at home and she's got to have space and a big garden and things to do all day. It's not necessary anymore. We look for convenience in Gauteng, so the more convenient the better. Value for money is a big factor. Are you getting? We can compare lots of types of properties and then make a determination on where you're actually getting value for money. So the property space has become quite competitive, and government had to also, enter that space, give citizens different opportunities and choices. And also, I think our responsibility as government is to provide for all the different categories of the population. So it's not just the very poor, it's also the affluent, it's the middle, it's the working, it's those that will work in professions where they will retire at 65 and that sort of thing. So we can't as government just respond to one cohort of the population. We've got to think holistically about all the different categories that we find, and do our policies speak to all of them? Where are the gaps? And then, of course, it's our responsibility to close those gaps.
I think it's been very exciting from an engineering perspective, traditional engineering perspective, because we always saw infrastructure as economic versus social, and social was left for government to sort out, and that engineers didn't really play there. So it's been quite exciting, the work that your department has done to bring dignity to human settlements. And I love the fact that you said to also open it up to, various types of bias, if I can put it that way, and just even the thought that has gone behind analyzing the needs of a normal South African on the street and their housing needs, because also the private sector can be quite difficult. It can they can gatekeep, if I can put it that way. So congratulations, MEC. We're very excited, and even with your vision for smart cities within Gauteng, maybe if you can just give us an overview of how that is coming.
Look, so not only we moved from the RDP, traditional RDPs that post 1994 citizens were accustomed to. We've gone into densification, and we've moved into what we call mega project development. So those are like you crowd in both public and private funding. And the core of it is definitely an investment in social housing, subsidized and non-subsidized, and then you get different typologies beyond that. So you have your neighbor, or in a development. It's also an attempt to try and break down the party spatial planning. So your neighbor you could have an RTP recipient, and within less than a kilometer radius you have somebody who owns a house that they're paying a bond on. And it's really to almost force South Africans to integrate, and not continue this perpetual us and them, just based on your earning or your social standing, because our belief is really an RGP is not the end. It's the beginning because of where you are at a particular time in your life. But if you think back to like the traditional RGPs, many of them have gone on to extend the houses. They double stories today, because it doesn't mean that you in a particular earning bracket you're going to remain there for the rest of your life, and you shouldn't. We need to, all of us, aspire and have ambition to improve. So you and the inverse is also true. You can afford a bond today, and something happens, and life is life, and then you can't afford your bond. What happens then? So we're forcing South Africans really to integrate, but with that is, as I say, you crowd in funding from government and the private sector, so there's a space for economic opportunity for the private sector, because at the end of the day they look at their bottom line. It's got to make financial sense. So you can't put a service station, as an example, in the middle of nowhere with no people, with no cars. So if we bring people, you bring schools, you bring economic activity. One of our mega projects is very close to a TVET college out in the West Rand. They're going to build student accommodation. So those types of things. So we're not just saying that housing, human settlements is just for houses. There's even an opportunity, and we don't play in the space of student accommodation, but the private sector does. And they incentivize to do so. We create the platform and the opportunity. But linking to your question about smart cities, for me, smart cities are about a city that functions. And I think people have an idea that a smart city is about robots and everything connected. Yes, connectivity is a very important aspect, but it's about whether when you open your tap there's water. Every day, consistently, when it's going to be maintained, when there's going to be a problem. Nothing must surprise you. Are you able to move with certainty from point A to point B in your city? Are you able to move goods? Not only people. So does the city function? And I think when we think about, even from an engineering perspective, engineers should take that into consideration, that while I provide a solution, am I providing a solution that's going to create a functional city? Or am I just responding to norms and standards that have been taught in the class, and stormwater drainage must be built in this fashion, and that's it. And like I said previously, engineers are supposed to find a solution. So you are meant to think out of the box and look at a problem and find a solution and provide the solution. I often make the example of countries that have built in the sea. So we are made to believe that you can't build on water, you can't build on dolomite, as an example. It might be expensive, definitely, but there's a solution for us to be able to build on whatever you find. If you don't have space, what is the solution? Dubai is what it is now, but they've reclaimed so much of the desert. And if you think, for those who know Dubai, there was like nothing. There was just an airport, and there was nothing. And now it's one of the fastest growing cities in the world. both economically, population-wise, infrastructure, smart city aspects because the cities function. So think about Singapore. It's an island, it's a small country. Japan, it's an island, but they're able to use their space in a very functional manner and in a way that is sustainable for generations and generations to come. And I think that's what we've got to do. Any solution that we provide, it has to outlive us.
Yes,
if it doesn't outlive us, it's not a solution. It's a stopgap measure. A solution must be permanent.
I agree, MEC. Thank you so much for that. And maybe that brings me back to you personally. You seem to have, a love for what you do, a passion for what you do. I could actually listen to you the whole day. What is your background and what enticed you into looking after infrastructure for South Africa?
So, my background is in politics. And I come from a politically active family. All of us are still active in different aspects of society and life and all of that. So that was like growing up with just family members, parents, grandparents who just always try and help people. So my background is really actually in politics. And then I worked in the private sector. I worked in the construction industry. It was also by mistake or by accident because my parents were in construction as well, different construction companies and aspects and throughout their working life. So I worked with my dad for some time. And then when I joined public office, I was just deployed to the Department of Infrastructure. But I think that the passion really comes from being able to change people's lives. Even if I never meet you, and I don't meet probably 70%, 75, 80% of the people that we make an impact on. But just so if I think about, I don't want to do this anymore because it's this and that and the other, because it can be quite a toxic space. Politics can be quite a toxic space. But then you think about the people that you're impacting on, and you think about some go somewhere, you're going to change her life. She'll never meet you, you'll never meet her, but that's why we're here. And I don't think it's about getting standing ovations or whatever it is. It's just about knowing that any decision that you make every single day or any action that you take every day is going to impact someone's life, and it impacts it positively. Will I continue? I don't know. I think the contribution to society and the impact, I definitely want to continue doing that for all of my life. And I think there's lots of ways in which you can do it. You're an engineer, you're a professional, you can do it in that way as well. It doesn't need for you to be in government. It doesn't need for you to be in political office. It doesn't even need for you to have power, if I could put it that way. I think it just needs for you to have agency. Are you willing to do use what you know to change other people's lives? And think about, they always tell me at home that I'm an over-considerate person. So before I do something, I think about, is it going to inconvenience this person? Can I ask them? Okay, let me do it myself. I don't want to ask. I don't want to inconvenience anybody. But that's just it. Use what you've been given. Some of us have got talents in various ways. I was never good at maths and science, so I was never going to be an engineer. But there are those that are you contributing to make an impact? And I think for me, if you're able to do that, that's very fulfilling.
I think what I can summarize it at is that one of your deepest principles is having a deep sense of purpose and ensuring that you live that daily.
Yes. I think also just not being selfish. So we do live in a world where people are extremely selfish. They look for instant gratification. You want to see what is in it for me now, today. And I'm not that kind of person. So I really think about what is it going to do for me, and I always think about I also think because my background was in community work, I've often had to interact with communities that have got so much less than I have. So I always think about how privileged I am, and I always think about and I always accept how privileged I am. There's always somebody who has less than you.
Yeah, that is so true. So in delving deeper into that, into the dichotomy of making decisions, how then do you balance like technical advice with community expectations, also with the realities of the fact that we don't have lots of money in South Africa to, to provide for everyone or provide all these super expensive solutions?
So I always go back to what I was taught as a child. Just be honest. So if you're honest with communities, they appreciate that more than making all these promises that you yourself know are not going to be met. Yes, you've got to listen to communities. You have to understand where they're coming from. You have to appreciate what is it that they're struggling with and what are their needs. But if you're honest with them and you say to them, look, we know that there's 10,000 of you and 10,000 of you want houses. We just have money for 2,000. And what we're going to do is take the most vulnerable. You're all vulnerable, but who are the most? There's always somebody who has less than you. Yes. So the ones who have the least, we're going to prioritize them and get communities to buy in. I think a lot of professions, there's no module that teaches you community engagement.
True.
And I think if there's something that we could change in the curriculum, is that every profession, doesn't matter what profession it is, we must develop a module called community engagement, because everything you've learned at university and as a profession, nothing prepares you for community engagements. Nothing prepares you for a community that is gonna get so angry, make demands, threaten you, make you feel like you may not get home. Nothing prepares you for that. And I think the theory of it is important. You still have to experience it, yes, but I think that's a big gap in our education system, higher education system, because a lot of professions, you interact with communities, and when you go into communities, you are black and white. I'm an engineer, this is what I've been taught, this is what I have to do, and that's what I'm going to do. And you get into a community that they will tell you, like, don't bring your English. Right?
I think they've told me that before.
Yes, they will tell you, like, you are just speaking a lot of English, like we don't hear what you're saying, and this is what we want. And you end up being at odds with the same community you meant to serve, and the same community you meant to provide a solution for. So you have to step back outside of your comfort zone. It is extremely uncomfortable, and I think a lot of professions and professionals struggle with that. It's so uncomfortable. You probably go home thinking, oh, I was in a community with like a bunch of illiterates. They don't understand, and trust me, they understand what they want. They know what they want. They know what they need. And at some point, there's got to be convergence between the black and white, book taught, professional, academic, qualified, yes, versus the very, if granular, somebody who just says, but this is what I want, and what you are saying to me doesn't sound like you're giving me what I want. So if we could change the curriculum, I would advocate for that like, it doesn't matter what profession you are. Can we just develop a module that teaches you, like the community engagement 101? I'm sure there's a lot of us that can contribute to that module, because without community buy-in, you are going to fail. No matter how good your solution is, that solution is going to fail.
Yeah, and unfortunately, we've seen a lot of those white elephants in the infrastructure world. We won't mention some of them.
Yes. And I'm sure there's nothing worse than a professional who has put their heart and soul into a project only to see that it's never used,
Standing
just
there,
standing
empty.
Yes.
And then they start like stealing from it
Yes.
as well. Yeah, it is very sad. Thank you so much, MEC. I think, you know, what you said about honesty being the base of that community one-on-one course. Because a lot of us, we almost feel pressure.
Yeah. And you shouldn't. You should just feel that you can engage with the community at their level and be honest with them. And they're going to be angry. No, don't doubt. They are going to be angry. They're going to probably pick up a few chairs and try to, you know, come at you. But they will appreciate the honesty more than the promises that have never been fulfilled.
That is so true. So looking back on your journey, what message would you like to share with young women, especially because now we're going to the month of August, who aspire to lead like you do in engineering, in the built environment, in the public service, especially in these like roles that have been traditionally male dominated? As you said, like your family was in construction. I'm sure that wasn't
Yes.
an easy environment for you.
So I would just say that, okay, so fortunately with me, I am one of 5 siblings and we all girls.
Oh, wow.
So I never grew up with the, you know, treating boys differently to
Yes.
girls. We grew up knowing we could do anything.
Yes.
So my dad didn't have a son who needed to know how to use a drill. We all had to do it and change light bulbs and fix this. We had to do it and we did it. And I think that the women today have got opportunities that our mothers definitely never had, our older sisters never had, you know, our grandmothers could only have dreamt of. And I think the one thing that I'd like to say to women is that no matter what you pursue, our traditional roles as women never fade. So find a way of balancing, because you still have to cook,
True.
you still have to raise children, you still have to know where someone's socks are, and you still have to do those things. So your traditional roles don't go away, and our traditional roles are actually what give us strength.
Yes.
And the other big word of advice I can give to women is build support networks and a support structure. It doesn't have to be your family, it doesn't have to be a blood relative, but build support structures. So, you know, men are able to access opportunities because they're able to make independent decisions immediately. Before you and I make a decision, I've got to think about, okay, who's going to pick the kids up from school, who's going to do this, and then you first have to sort all of that out.
Exactly.
And then you can say yes. And by the time you've said yes, 5 other men have already said yes, and the opportunity is theirs. So build a support network that where you know you can say yes, and then call your people and say, okay, this is where I'm going, but you must please do X, Y, Z. And when you have the opportunity, give back to the same support network. I think lastly is women often struggle with imposter syndrome, and we actually are very good at what we do. We actually are very there's no doubt that we don't have the capacity and the capability, but we do doubt ourselves. So imposter syndrome, I mean, even if you look at the stats, it hardly affects men. And one a lady that I admire very much once said that men, you know, the world will easier listen to a stupid man than a room full of intelligent women. And so if we can get over that and just say that even if I sound stupid, just say it anyway. Because men do not think that I sound stupid. They actually do believe that they're fine. But I believe I wouldn't have gotten as far as I have if I didn't have a support structure. And of course it comes with time, just learning boundaries. So if I've decided that this day I'm going to cook for my family, I don't work. So it doesn't, okay, fortunately I don't work in a department that is a disaster response department. So it doesn't matter if you need a house today, I can't give you a house today. So I'm okay with that. So I can only give you a house when it's built and it's complete. But if I've decided this is what I'm going to do with my kids, that's what I do. And I don't look at my phone. I know nobody's going to phone me that, there's a lady who's like about to die if she doesn't have a house. It can't happen. Even if that were the case, unfortunately I can't. So I don't serve in health or policing that I've got, you've got to respond. So I'm fortunate in that way. But just don't, we always have to, as women, unfortunately, we always have to negotiate our priorities. So you've got to think about, which one do I fix now? Which one is a priority, yet they're all priorities. But in that negotiation, build your support structure, and no is a full sentence.
I love that. I feel like you were speaking to me. Thank you so much. I feel so seen. Thank you very much, MEC, for that. So you talked a lot about legacy and ensuring that what we do must outlive us. And for you personally, in 20 or 30 years' time, if somebody walks through a Gauteng settlement, what would you like them to see or feel?
That they were once part of a community and they enjoyed good memories, good times, good neighbors, because that's what, you don't think about your home as the physical structure, you think about the environment around it. So you think about what are the memories. I mean, if you think about when you grew up, you knew about this uncle that did this aunt that did that. You and your siblings used to hide under this. You don't think about, we lived in a 4-room house. That's not what you think about. So I would like people to think that the Department of Human Settlements gave them that opportunity to live a meaningful life, have good memories, create lifelong bonds, and really nurture and raise well-rounded individuals, because you are only well-rounded because of your environment, and when we look at where we take majority of our beneficiaries from to houses, that's the stark difference that you're providing. So it's people in informal settlements into formal units. Nobody can convince me that living in an informal settlement is okay. Short-term, long-term, it doesn't matter. It's undignified, it's inhumane. There's no well-rounded human being that's going to come out of such a situation. And that's majority of our beneficiaries, we take them out of that. Majority of other beneficiaries, we take them from extremely vulnerable situations where they've been kicked out house to house because they can't pay rent. Maybe you make this month's rent of 200, but next month you pay 150, and then the third month the landlord is kicking you out. And our beneficiaries have got baggage of being burdens to families, family members. They are burdens to friends. They are burdens to society. And that's who we provide the housing for. And for them just to look back and say that, my life was so different when we moved into our home, and we had this person as a neighbor, and this happened that day, and this, so that you don't think about the fact that your situation is the way it is because of where and how you are living.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, that is MEC Motara, a woman full of vision, purpose, and just such deep wisdom, and also a heart for serving. MEC, thank you so much for sharing your vision and your wisdom with us. You've really reminded us why we do what we do. That doing engineering is not just about like the infrastructure, like the building, and then you walk away from it, but literally creating those conditions for people to prosper and for future generations to prosper as well. So thank you so much that your department and various other departments within South Africa have taken up this role and that it's not just for government alone to undertake, but it's a higher call for us as engineers, as planners, as built environment professionals, as policymakers, to ensure that we work towards a sense of purpose, a sense of shared purpose, and a greater vision for the places and the spaces that people grow up in and live in and thrive in, hopefully one day. Thank you, MEC.
Thank you. You're welcome.